Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good evening and welcome, kits and cubs and members of the best damn fam in all of podcasting, and perhaps a few people that we normally don't get to see in our morning show who have decided to join us this evening. So glad that we get to spend some time together. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Welcome to our watch party. Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, is planning to make an announcement. I do not think that this is going to be live, given that word on the tweet. At least what we've heard from Thomas Lukasik is that this was a message that was originally recorded and pre-recorded and intended to air, I'm going to guess. I don't know if it was intended to air today originally or yesterday, but that committee stuff screwed up. But it seems that they voted today, and it seems 3-2 because they had a majority on the committee. It went through, and therefore Danielle Smith is going to be making an announcement this evening, probably, like I said, recorded, as to, whether or not there is going to be a referendum. We all suspect that it is going to be the case that there will be one, that she will add a 10th question to her October 19th referendum on Canadian unity. And then, of course, the next big question will be, is that will it be the question that Forever Canadian, the Forever Canadian group suggested, that they put on their application form, stating that if there needs to be a referendum, then they would prefer it to be on that question, a form on which they explicitly said they did not want a referendum. They wanted a legislative process. And we have someone here in the Dam Fam that sent us some information, because I had been confused a little bit on the collecting of the signatures. And there were two different thresholds for legislative action and for an actual referendum. And I believe that the number of signatures that the Forever Canadian group got was a number under the old rules that would have qualified for the legislative action and not the referendum. So all this twerking and twisting that they have been doing, the UCP claiming that Thomas Lukasik really, really, really wanted a referendum, and taking quotes of things he said in the past, and then taking quotes of things that the NDP said, and that Ms. Pancholi said, and that Ms. Sigurdsson said, that have absolutely nothing to do with the Forever Canadian petition. So it's kind of interesting to watch what has been going on there with that, them trying to torque his words, to put words in his mouth, and make it like he's been demanding or that he wanted a referendum, when the paperwork clearly shows he did not. in fact, and didn't even gather the number of signatures that would have been required, I believe, under the old rules for the referendum, just enough to have the legislative thing. So Danielle Smith, who clearly did not want to get her hands dirty with regard to it having to be a government-sponsored referendum because of the utter incompetence or brazen hubris of the people who got their hands on the leaked list and screwed everything up. That even they created a situation that Elections Alberta was able to surmount the near impossible hurdles to open an investigation, and they were able to. And given that the courts said that that petition should have never been started in the first place, so there is no reason for Danielle to be even suggesting that those 300,000 signatures actually exist, because they haven't been validated. And with the list leak, we don't even know if they are real. um, she's pushing through anyway, because that's what she does, right? She's a human bulldozer. She wants something, she gets told no, she just steamrolls anyway. So this is what we're waiting for. It was supposed to start a couple of minutes ago. It is not. The CBC feed is now live. So let's go to it. They're talking with Max. Ian Hannamansing is talking with Max Fawcett here. We're maybe a couple of I'll go back to the beginning of it since it came on. We'll put us a couple of minutes behind of what was actually being broadcast, but that's okay for that. And since we like Max, so let's see what it is that he has to say here.
But the premier has sort of bulldozed through that. It could also be some version of the negative question that the separatists tried to get put on the ballot and had the courts kick back. I think one thing is clear. This is not going to be the end of this conversation. This is sort of the end of the beginning. I think we are going to be talking about separation, unfortunately, for a while to come here in Alberta.
So the Alberta courts quashed a separatist petition just last week. Now you went through some of them, but remind us, what options does that leave Smith?
Well, in theory, it leaves her the option of calling the question herself. Understandably, she probably doesn't want to do that because it is a very unpopular proposition among the general public. I think in more normal times, she would simply leave this be, let the courts, put it to rest. But her party is run and very heavily populated by Alberta separatists, and they have made it very clear that if they do not get some sort of question on Alberta independence in the near future, they're going to do to her what they did to Jason Kenney, which is remove her as the leader of the province and their party. So she has to find a way to give the separatists what they want without appearing to side with them. A lot of people, including myself, have more or less concluded that she is, for all intents and purposes, a separatist, even if she pretends otherwise. But she hasn't come out and said that yet, and I don't think that would be wise for her to do so. So she's going to try to split the middle here somehow on having a question without appearing to take their side.
So here, just want to note very quickly that Max talked right away about her being a bulldozer. That she's going to bulldoze through. Sorry, this is not working. Let's try that instead. This one might be better. That she's going to bulldoze through no matter what. And again, making it very clear that this is a bit about her trying to hold on to her job, and that her who's running things, and what the question is going to be. It could be the Fervor Canadian question, could be the separatist question, or could be something else that she just concocts herself. But we know that the separatists definitely do not want a question that is based on keeping Canada together, because that's not good enough to go out and disturb things. Let's keep going here with Mr. Fawcett and what it is he has to say here.
When you describe her as a separatist, is that because she's allowing the separatists within her party to kind of dictate policy, or do you genuinely believe that she herself would like to see Alberta be independent?
I'm less interested in her sort of personal views, because as the premier of the province, what matters is what she does. And what she's been doing for the last 18 months at least is making life as easy as possible for the Alberta separatist movement to get a toehold in our discourse and to get their question on the ballot. And, there's been any number of warnings about the risks this poses in terms of national security, in terms of economic damage to the province. She's had a bunch of off-ramps where she could have, put this thing to rest, most recently the court case that you referenced. And every single time she gets a chance to step away from this, she steps on the gas instead. So, whether or not she is personally a separatist, to me, is less interesting than the way she has governed. And she has governed, for all intents and purposes, like a separatist.
Max, just to let you know and let our audience know, we are waiting for the beginning of the release of that video, which should be very soon, 90 seconds or so. But I understand the feed is not up yet. I may have to interrupt you as we go through this. How much separatist sentiment is there in Alberta?
It hasn't grown that much in spite of all of her many efforts to make it easy for the separatists. It's in the low 20s, mid 20s, somewhere like that. The danger is that there is also a percentage, call it 15 to 25%, that wants to send out Ottawa a message. They're frustrated. They feel like they haven't been treated fairly. That's a whole other subject, but we can't get into that now. And so, there is a window, or there's a segment of the population that would vote for some version of a question that sounds separatist. And that's the danger, is that it's not the 25% hardcore separatists, it's the other 25% joining them to send a message to Ottawa, and that message potentially backfiring not just on the entire country, but on Alberta as well.
I think I've heard from some people in Alberta that, boy, Quebec manages to get what it wants because it dangles the possibility of separatism. Alberta needs to do that too. And so appearing to support separatism might be to Alberta's strategic advantage. Do you hear people expressing that sentiment as well?
All the time. And this is the knife to the throat strategy. The part they never talk about is the fact that Quebec's dalliance with separatism has cost it dearly in terms of jobs, investment, being able to attract talent. It has made Quebec the province that depends as heavily on equalization as it does, which is, of course, a big complaint of the separatists. We don't seem to be able to connect those dots in some circles here in Alberta, that, taking this very risky sort of threatening posture doesn't just offer benefits, it also offers drawbacks. And I think we're about to find out the hard way what those drawbacks look like.
Okay, we are live here on CBC News Network. Max, you're doing a great job. We are working on getting the feed up from...
Okay, so number one, they can't cheat competently, and they can't get the feed up competently. These people. That's a little weird. Seems I'm a little fuzzy here. Let me fix that up. About Quebec, again, one thing that they also don't mention is, again, as we mentioned on the show, Quebec did it by forming a political party and then running on that. Don't know what's going on here with the feed. That is very weird. I have no idea why I am purple all of a sudden. That is just very, very, very weird. All right. Hopefully that'll fix itself up here. There we go. That was very strange. So they don't say that the Parti Québécois actually ran both times on pursuing a referendum and got a mandate. That's the other part that they forget when they keep on talking about the Quebec thing. Right? Since they appear to be stalling for time, or stretching, I should say, let's go back and see what it is that they had to say. I'm sorry for that picture going all wonky there. All right, let's see if it will show up now. There we go. All right, let's go back to Max.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, again, reminding our audience we'll take it as soon as we get it. And reminding you, Max, I may have to interrupt you if you're in the middle of an answer. But let me ask you this. The bigger, well, I don't know if it's the bigger picture, but I guess another picture is the political fortunes of the UCP, of Premier Danielle Smith's party, and the upcoming election. How are they doing?
Surprisingly well for the extent to which they appear to be trying to tear at the fabric of this country. Almost all the polls are showing that they would win a majority government if we went to an election anytime soon. This does not appear to be harming their fortunes in the province, and I kind of think that reflects back on the opposition here, the NDP, and the way they've handled things. But the risk for the UCP is less the NDP right now than it is their own party splitting in two.
Okay, you know what, Max? I'm going to be rude and interrupt you. Thank you very much for your analysis. We now have the feed, and we are going to go to that. Here's Danielle Smith.
In this province on the future of Alberta and Canada. Last week, an Alberta judge released a decision finding that the citizen initiative petition organized by the group Stay Free Alberta on the issue of Alberta separation is unconstitutional because, in the judge's view, there was not adequate consultation done with the First Nations band about the potential effect of the petition on their treaty rights. This ruling fundamentally misinterprets the nature of the duty to consult, which was never meant to prevent citizens from making their voices heard through a democratic process. Now, I want to be clear. I support Alberta remaining in Canada. That is how I would vote on separation in a provincial referendum. It is also the position of my government and my caucus. However, despite my personal support for remaining in Canada, I am deeply troubled by an erroneous court decision that interferes with the democratic rights of hundreds of thousands of Albertans. Albertans who volunteered, prepared petitions, made their case to fellow citizens, and appear to have secured the required amount of signatures necessary under Alberta law to hold a provincial referendum. The fact is that between the Forever Canada petition requesting a referendum on Alberta remaining in Canada and the Stay Free Alberta petition requesting a referendum on leaving Canada, approximately 700,000 Albertans have signed a petition requesting a vote on this issue. And I, as Premier, will not have a legal mistake by a single judge silence the voices of hundreds of thousands of Albertans. That's not the Alberta way. Alberta's future will be decided by Albertans, not the courts. Our government will therefore be appealing the decision to Alberta's Court of Appeal and, if necessary, the Supreme Court of Canada. But this process will take many months and possibly years before being addressed by those higher courts. In the meantime, under our legal system, this troubling court decision is binding law in Alberta until it is successfully appealed. This means that it is unlikely the courts will permit Elections Alberta to hold a binding provincial referendum on separation until this incorrect ruling is overturned or clarified. But there is another way to hear from Albertans while we wait for our legal appeal to be heard. That is why I'm announcing today that I will be requesting our government add an additional question to the October 19th referendum vote announced previously. The additional question will be, should Alberta remain a province of Canada? Or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada? Because this proposed referendum question does not directly trigger separation, but if successful, would ask Alberta's government to commence the legal process necessary to hold a binding referendum on the matter, the recent court ruling would not be applicable, and the referendum question I outlined could proceed. This question will also ensure the 700,000 signatories to both the Forever Canada petition and the Stay Free Alberta petition are respected, and the will of Albertans is heard. Kicking the can down the road only prolongs a very emotional and important debate, and muzzling the voices of hundreds of thousands of Albertans wanting to be heard is unjustifiable in a free and democratic society. It's time to have a vote, understand the will of Albertans on this subject, and move on. Now, obviously, Alberta's first ever provincial vote on our province's future in Canada is of monumental importance. As such, I feel it is important to clearly state my personal position so Albertans know where I stand. I first want to assure Albertans that our government will respect the outcome and direction received on all of the referendum questions being voted on this October 19th. Our government has already launched the website, albertareferendum2026.ca, with a significant amount of background information on the immigration and constitutional questions previously announced, and I hope every Albertan will take the time to explore that website in detail. As to the specific issue of separation, I have repeatedly stated that the position of the UCP caucus and UCP government is to build a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. I have never deviated from that position, and I will not do so now. I will therefore be voting for Alberta to remain in Canada, while continuing to work each and every day to restore and strengthen provincial rights under the Canadian Constitution. The fact is, Canada was founded on this very principle. Canada is very different from the United States and many other Western democracies. For example, the United States centralizes the majority of power and decision-making in its federal government. In Canada, we chose a decentralized federation composed of very unique and diverse provinces left to govern themselves in almost all matters, with the main exceptions of national defense and international affairs. Over time, our federal government has sought to move towards a more centralized American-style system, with Ottawa attempting to take over many provincial areas of jurisdiction, using all manner of legislative, judicial, and financial leverage. I categorically reject Ottawa's attempts to do so and call on all provincial leaders and MPs to undo the extensive damage that centralization of power in Ottawa has done to our country economically and with respect to national unity. I am fiercely loyal to both Alberta and Canada, but I truly believe our country is so much stronger and more prosperous when we respect the rights of provinces and empower them to govern themselves with minimal federal interference. Albertans, not Ottawa. Quebecers, not Ottawa. And all the other provinces must each be empowered to control our own direction and destiny, whether it's energy policy, agricultural practices, policing, firearms ownership, or how to administer our social programs. The days of Ottawa dictating and interfering in provincial affairs must come to an end. The future economic success and unity of our country depends on it. When I was first elected Premier, I was very concerned that it would be almost impossible to restore provincial rights stolen from Alberta and other provinces by the Trudeau-Singh government in Ottawa. However, our government went to work anyway to see if we could. We have been relentless in making our voices heard, launching dozens of legal actions, appearing in hundreds of national interviews, bridge building with other premiers, and aggressively passing legislation, such as the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act, to take back our provincial autonomy from the federal government. We ran extensive advertising campaigns against the destructive net zero electricity regulations, as well as the catastrophic oil and gas production cap, in order to persuade our fellow Canadians that Trudeau's anti-Alberta agenda was also anti-Canadian and was destroying the unity, energy, and economic future of our nation. A great majority of Albertans joined us in that fight, calling friends, relatives, and participating in social media to spread that message throughout the country. We made a lot of noise as a province. We fought hard and refused to accept the status quo. And the result? Well, my friends, we have started to win. Over the course of the last 2 years, the tide of national public opinion on resource development, provincial rights, energy policy, and a host of other issues began to turn. Our Alberta oil sands went from a national target to a national treasure. Pipelines went from impossible to a national imperative. Justin Trudeau's anti-Alberta, anti-energy policies became a national embarrassment, one of several, that ultimately cost him his prime ministership. The Leave It in the Ground NDP, led by Jagmeet Singh, was electorally annihilated. And the federal Liberals, led by their new leader, Prime Minister Mark Carney, adopted most of Alberta's positions on energy and resource development. In fact, the current Prime Minister has worked very constructively with our government to craft an Alberta-Ottawa Energy Agreement, or MOU, as it is often called. This has already attracted tens of billions of dollars in investment for new pipelines, natural gas-run data centers, electricity generation, and so much more. Under that energy agreement with Ottawa, the destructive federal electricity regulations are gone. The economically disastrous oil and gas production cap has been scrapped. New pipelines carrying nearly 1 million barrels of Alberta oil to the United States are proceeding with speed toward construction. And a new 1 million barrel a day pipeline to the BC West Coast is well in progress and on track to have its permitting completed by September of next year. Could and should these reforms and projects move faster? Yes, of course they should. The federal government can and needs to act with even more urgency than it has. Do we in Alberta still have our differences with the federal Liberal government? Obviously. And make no mistake, we will relentlessly challenge them to respect our provincial rights and jurisdiction every time they step over the line. But my fellow Albertans, there can be no doubt that things are a world of difference better for our province than they were under the Trudeau NDP government. Both major federal parties, the federal Conservatives And now the federal Liberals, representing 85% of voters in Canada, are advocating for Alberta to increase our energy production and exports. Only some extremists in the NDP, Bloc Québécois, and Green parties, representing less than 15% of voters in Canada, hold fast to their anti-Alberta, leave-it-in-the-ground rhetoric. This complete turning of Canadian government policy and national public opinion was unthinkable just a few short years ago. No one thought it was possible, except here in Alberta. We turned the tide. We are winning hearts and minds to our cause right across the country, as many of our fellow Canadians are coming to understand that a strong Alberta and strong provinces means a stronger and more prosperous Canada. Now, to those hundreds of thousands of Albertans who are still not convinced or are unsatisfied with the pace of change and believe that separation is the answer, I want you to know that I empathize with you and I understand why you feel that way. You are justifiably frustrated and angry with Ottawa. You are proud and loyal Albertans that have watched our province be taken advantage of repeatedly over past decades, and you want it to stop. So do I, more than anything. Like you, I love this province and our people so much. I am so proud to be Albertan. But I asked you to please consider joining me to vote for Alberta to remain in Canada and not give up on our beautiful country just as we're gaining respect and the tide has turned in our favor. Now when our fellow Canadians, even those that may support different political parties, are nonetheless supporting Alberta's vision for a prosperous, energy-rich nation with strong provinces building a Canada we can be proud of again. In my view, now is not the time to give up hope in our country, not when we have fought so hard for so long and come so far. I believe Canada can still work. I believe it's working better every day, and it can work even better in the future if we keep fighting together for it. Together with our fellow Canadians, we have built a Canada that is loved and respected all over the world. Our men and women have died together fighting for our freedoms and the safety of hundreds of millions around the globe. Canadians were there in Europe, fighting and making the ultimate sacrifice in the Second World War long before we were joined in that effort by our American allies. Together with our allies, we were also instrumental in beating back the forces of communism and terrorism. The world would be a much darker place if not for Canada. We have built marvels of technology together. We are known the world over as a country of innovators, explorers, and entrepreneurs, but also of peacemakers, philanthropists, and contributors to the good of the world. Our federal politicians may stray from our foundational values from time to time, but our fellow Canadians, they are our family, our friends, our blood. We all know our family needs to do some work to get rid of a few bad habits developed over the past decade. But that's what we are in the process of fixing. Now is the time to double down and fight even harder for the prosperity and change we want to see in our country. Because Albertans are at our best. We are hard at work.
All right, that is a video that was produced by the government of Alberta.
Oh, wow.
The Premier, Danielle Smith, with a very partisan message. We carried it for you in its entirety.
Well, no, you didn't carry it in its entirety. You literally cut her off at the end, sir. What the hell? What the hell was that? What the hell? Ah, Lord. Okay. Gotta make myself unfuzzy yet again. Don't know why that happens every time we come back from a... Okay. I am, wow. That is... I have no idea what to make of that. That was just god awful. That was just when I think she can't muddy it up or muck it up even worse than she has. She found a way. Okay, first of all, that didn't need to be that long. So clearly, all the, we're doing this, we're more respected now. We got the 9 bad laws changed, Trudeau, and then, put in all the patriotic stuff after, we served together and all that kind of stuff. That's trying to bury that announcement in a ton of information. So the announcement is that she is indeed putting everything at risk. She's pulling a David Cameron. Oh, let's just have the separation question there. They'll never vote for it. And and that will solidify, and then we'll just have the vote, and then we'll be done. And we all know how that worked out for the UK. We also know how that worked out after. They had that series of prime ministers after prime minister after prime minister, and about the only person holding the country together was guess who? Mark Carney, because I think he had arrived like about a few days before the vote or something like that. And while they kept on changing prime ministers more often than some people change underwear, he was the one constant, making sure that the entire UK economy didn't go in the crapper. Wow. This is absolutely incredible. She started off by saying that she didn't agree with that court decision because it was an error in law and it was undemocratic, made by just one judge. All of these things are lies. There is no error in law here. They were asking the petition, which is regulated, the petition collection drive by Elections Alberta, which represents the Crown, is a petition that, if it reaches its conclusion, which is to get a vote on the ballot, and the vote is successful, ends up violating treaty rights between Indigenous people in the Crown, rights that precede the existence of a government of Alberta of any kind. There was a duty to consult. Danielle Smith claims that there isn't one. There is. Absolutely, there is. In fact, there was such a duty to consult that there was a law that said that you cannot ask an unconstitutional question like that one. And then she changed the law. Even though a court ruled that the question was unconstitutional, she said that doesn't matter. The decision, she says, I wanted to protect the right of people to be heard. The decision didn't stop people from being heard. The decision said that the petition process was not permissible. The group had the freedom to gather itself together and go through the process again the right way. And by going through the process the right way, then the signatures could be validated. Nobody took away their right to be heard. The decision quashed the process. It wasn't about a right to be heard, as the process was improper. And then we have the dual improper process from everything that's gone on with the voters list, which she does not acknowledge at all whatsoever in there. She says, she makes some news by saying how it is that she would vote. Of course, that's what she says. And as we've learned with Danielle Smith, you can't rely on what she says. You have to rely on what she does. And since we don't know how it is she's going to vote, she could just say anything. Now, this doesn't put it to her advantage to say that she would vote that way, because the separatists clearly would not like that in that sense. But they already don't like her. So they're already, mobilizing to get her removed as leader of the party. So the question, that question of how she votes, she can say that she will vote federally as much as she wants. There would be more risk in her saying that she wouldn't. But we can't believe anything that she says, because she tends to lie. She lies reflexively. She lies about things that she doesn't even need to lie about. So, she says that She once again makes the lie about the 700,000 Albertans, counting the forever Canadian voters who signed the petition in order to avert, to run interference, to block this attempt. The separatist group was waiting for the rules to be loosened before they filed theirs. Forever Canadian went and filed theirs under the old rules in order to get theirs in first, because once they got theirs in first, it was supposed to be that no other question could be considered. Well, Danielle didn't like that either. And she allowed both processes to go concur to happen, even though she's only allowed to consider one question, and she has to consider it in the order it came. They asked for a legislative process. Specifically, they ticked the box on the form, even though Danielle and the guy that was the head of that committee, who was quoted in that press release that was issued before they had actually voted. He says in the press release that Thomas Lukasik explicitly demanded a referendum. We showed you this morning. We showed it to you this morning, the form itself that he used. I have it right here again for you. Let's see if we can bring it up on screen for you here. Be this one here. There you go. Right here, it says, petition information, type of petition. 2 choices, legislative or policy proposal, requires signature from 10% of electors on the post-election day list. Constitutional referendum proposal requires signatures from 20% of electors on the post-election day list, with the 20% threshold met in 2/3 of electoral divisions. You can check one or the other. The check is clearly besides legislative or policy proposal. He was not asking for a referendum. The documentation is there. We can all see it with our own eyes. But they just lie. They just lie. And on that front, we had a kit write us to provide us with some information. Because if you remember on the show, I was reading an article and I couldn't understand specifically why the numbers weren't seeming to match up. And this person had it. And now you'll excuse me, I'll have to look at the other way on the other screen. So I'm going to appear a little weird on camera as I read this. But this is information that you should have. And this is from Kit Melanie, who sent this to us. Another good show today, May 18th, 2026. Heard you and Grizzly disputing about the numbers required for the Citizen Initiative Act in Alberta. What has actually happened in Alberta is even more disturbing and treacherous once the facts are laid out. Important information to consider first is numbers are calculated on the total number of eligible electors in the province of Alberta from the 2023 general election. As you know, eligible electors are distinct from the general population. There are numerous reasons why these two numbers are different. Individuals under 18 years of age are not eligible to vote, those who are not Canadian citizens, etc. For the Forever Canadian campaign, of which I was a part of, this was under the, quote, old rules of the Citizen Initiative Act, with reaching a higher threshold of signatures to be completed within a shorter time period of 90 days. Even with these conditions, the Forever Canadian camp blew it out of the water. Taken from the Elections Alberta website regarding the Forever Canadian campaign, past Citizen Initiative petitions, Election Alberta. Total number of signatures required for a successful petition is 293,976, 10% of the 2,936,762 electors on the post-election day list of electors from 2023. Now, one of the changes that they made is the Forever Canadian people had to do based on the number of people on the list, whether they voted or not. The separatist group had to do it based on the number of people who voted. So their bar was really lowered. Estimated number of electors in the province were registered electors as of May 2025 were 2,966,192. The total number of valid signatures counted, as described in the Citizen Initiative Act, was 438,568. The total number of verified signatures after random statistical sampling method applied with a 95% confidence level, 404,293. The estimated percentage of electors in the province who signed the signature sheet, 13.6%. Now, you will notice in the thing that I read to you on the form, for the legislative or policy proposal and the constitutional referendum proposal, the signatures required are different. For the legislative or policy proposal, it requires signatures from 10% of the electors on the post-election day list. Now, the number of electors, that would be 293,976, the first number that was given in that note from Kit Melanie. That would be 10%. They got, if you count the ones that are just verified, 404,293. They blew that out of the water. Now, if they wanted signatures, they wanted the constitutional referendum process, they would need signatures from 20% of the electors on the post-election day list, which would be twice that. So it would be closer to 600,000. They didn't go get that. They did not go get that number. So there's absolutely no way that they could have requested a referendum, as the UCP claims, because they didn't go get the required amount of signatures. Just in raw numbers. And then on top of that, that 20% would have had to be also obtained in 2/3 of the electoral divisions. So each electoral division would have had to have 20% of their registered people on the list sign. So 20% overall wouldn't have been good. It's 20% overall, and then in 2/3 of the electoral divisions, and each of one of those 20% specifically. The Forever Canadian group did not try to meet that threshold. Afterwards, our fantastic Premier Danielle Smith got the rules changed to favor the SEPIs. To lower the number of required signatures, it was altered from 10% of eligible electors to 10% of the total number of votes cast in 2023 provincial general election. This makes quite a difference since a smaller number of eligible electors actually participate in their democratic duty to vote. Plus, the time period for the gathering of signatures for the campaign was altered from 90 days under the old rules to now being 120 days. And I believe that the separatist group also did not have to pay the $500 fee. So if you're looking at that, the total number of votes cast in the 2023 provincial general election was 1,777,315, included valid ballots, rejected ballots, and declined ballots. So they needed 177,732 signatures to get a valid citizen initiative petition that could have led to a referendum. I don't know if they had to get that number in 20% in that's 10% threshold in 2/3 of the ridings, but they only got the number themselves for a legislative or policy proposal, not a referendum, at least based on the old rules. Don't know what the new rules said about that. Interestingly, the only new rule that Danielle Smith decided that the separatists did not have to follow is the below under the old rules, the application fee for citizen initiative petition was only $500. So, you tell me if Danielle Smith is a separatist or not. She has altered the rules for this so many times, and all have been done to favor the SEPIs. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, acts like a duck, it's an effing duck. Sincerely, Kit Melody, member of the Dam Fam, and as Lady Laura would say, a seditionist duck. So yeah, this is this is something. This is something. She says that she is going to respect the result. However, she has a history of not respecting results before, as we saw with daylight savings time referendum. She's been told no on the pension. She's been told no on the police force as she's pushing them through anyway. Courts tell her she can't do stuff as she just declares the decision undemocratic and does what she wants to anyway. You will see that she did not pick either the Forever Canadian question, and she did not pick the separatist question, and managing probably to piss off absolutely everybody along the way. She picked a question: should Alberta remain a province of Canada, or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum on whether or not Alberta should separate from Canada? So she's not asking a yes or no question. Now, I do not know if there is an Alberta Referendum Act, but I know federally a referendum question necessarily has to be a yes no question. So this question, depending on what's voted, does not fall within the confines of what is required under the Clarity Act. It is not a clear question. Should the Alberta remain a province of Canada, or should the government of Alberta commence the legal process required under the Canadian Constitution to hold a binding provincial referendum? So this is a referendum on whether or not we have a referendum. If this referendum does not state, if the result is not, should Alberta remain a province of Canada? So she's going to actually make them choose between both. We remain a province of Canada, or we actually start the legal process to hold a binding provincial referendum. So these separatists are not going to be very happy because whatever she decides does not lead to a secession of Alberta. It leads to a whole new, this process basically going back to the beginning again and deciding that now we're going to have the referendum. So she's basically proposing that Alberta does this twice. If the vote is not to remain a province of Canada. This is a mess. This is a mess. In addition to that, if it's not that Alberta should remain a province of Canada, if the vote does go the other way, the duty to consult shows up all over again. She appears to believe that this question, formulating it this way, makes it such that she doesn't have to have a duty to consult because the vote doesn't result in anything that immediately affects treaty rights. Should we do this or should we do that? This is non-binding. I'm taking it as advice, but I will follow through. If you tell me to start that legal process, I will start that legal process. After which, I am clearly going to have to go do the duty to consult. So then she goes on to say, of course, I think that Canada could work, and it's not time, to do this just as we're getting our groove and all that kind of stuff. What groove? What groove, Danielle Smith? Because for that pipeline that you just signed, not a memorandum of understanding anymore, not a memorandum. We're being told it's not a memorandum of understanding anymore. It's an implementation agreement. So if it is an implementation agreement and you do have a duty to consult on the implementation agreement, you yourself just admitted this in this thing when you were trying to conflate duty to consult on a project versus duty to consult on whether or not you are going to unilaterally as a premier violate treaty to which you are not a party, treaty that existed before the government of Alberta was even a glimmer in anyone's eye. Oh my God, this is such a horrible mess. Do you really think that the Indigenous people are going to give you an ounce of credibility and consideration when you come to them on your duty to consult on the pipeline, considering how you are treating the duty to consult on a referendum on whether or not, again, you are unilaterally going to violate a treaty to which you are not a party as a government? They might not even agree to sit across the table from you. They are probably right now asking the Prime Minister, no cooperation on the separation issue, no fulfilling of her duty to consult. Uh, you should not be doing anything. You should be revoking that implementation agreement. The Prime Minister will not do that because the Prime Minister is a man on a mission, wants to get this done. But Danielle Smith may have just made this project impossible because she's created a situation where the vote on October 19th doesn't resolve the issue. If we had the vote on October 19th and they lost and we said, that's it, we're going forth, we're not debating this anymore, we're not discussing this anymore, and yes, there could create a situation where they get mad, there's an uprising, things could maybe get kinetic or violent. That would be have to tamp down. That would be another type of instability and uncertainty. But at least the question would have been decided. That'd be one thing. But after we have that vote October 19th with this question, the question persists. If the decision is not from the people that Alberta should remain a province of Canada, if the vote goes the other way, that continues. And that investment really never happens because if you're listening to Markham Hislop of Energy Media, he's saying that there isn't a case right now, even for that pipeline as it is. Very happy with the regulations to double the electricity grid. Those are fantastic. But that pipeline west, he's pointing out that given recent events, Asia was already on the route to electrifying everything that it needed to, to move away from oil, that type of stuff. But with what's going on in Iran, that has accelerated. So by the time this pipeline is operational, somewhere in 2034, will that demand be there? How quickly will those Asian markets that we are being told need that oil, how quickly will they have electrified? We'll still always need some oil for plastics and that type of stuff. But it's not going to be that much. It's not it's not that big a share of what's going on. So will that demand even be there? Any additional delays makes that window close. This is not a serious initiative, and Danielle Smith appears to be, if she is indeed a Federalist, really banking on the fact that this question will yield a result that says we stay in Canada, and she doesn't have to go to the second step. But you come and tell me that those separatists are going to be happy that she's asking a question that does not lead to an immediate move. She's basically betrayed everyone here. They are going to mobilize so damn fast to try to Jason Kenney her. They are getting together. They're going to get their people to buy memberships. They're going to get their people to sell memberships. They're going to put a special review meeting to come as quickly as possible. And they are going to remove her out of there, like they did Jason Kenney. I think that she thinks she is clever enough to be able to navigate this. And maybe these people are so incredibly incompetent and so full of themselves and just incapable of not tripping over their own dicks or their own hubris that it might work. It might work. Like that article I read to you from David Kleiman-Haga. Danielle Smith is not a particularly deep thinker, and she only seems to live for the moment, and she only tries to get through the moment, and it seems to work for her. That may be what's going on here, but the civil war in Alberta is on here, kids and cubs. There's absolutely no doubt of it now. She has declared that. She has declared a period of instability that she, I'm guessing, if she really wants that pipeline, hopes ends on October 19th. But I doubt very much that there's not going to be any lingering effect on that. And just the utter betrayal of the Indigenous community, even if that vote goes her way, the vote on this question goes her way, they won't trust her. I don't know what Mark Carney is going to do to try to get that pipeline built, regardless. And if we saw him yesterday, you will notice that, as a big surprise to me, because I suspected that there would be some type of press conference after his meeting with David Eby, and it didn't happen. So I'm guessing that the meeting was maybe not as productive as people would have hoped, and probably not as productive from the Premier's side, because a couple of minutes earlier, hours earlier, when he was talking to, I think it was to the Vancouver Board of Trade, the Prime Minister kind of made it rather clear that, if Mr. Eby is not willing to play ball, the Prime Minister is perfectly happy to concentrate his attentions elsewhere, because there's lots of projects going on in lots of other places that requires attention. It's a move that Premier Eby probably didn't see coming, and maybe explains that the only thing that we saw from them was their chat prior to them going into the meeting, in which Mr. Eby moved a little bit away from Mark Carney is rewarding bad behavior to, I am convinced that Prime Minister Carney is a friend of BC. Yeah, I suppose if you heard the Prime Minister sitting in a chair, wondering to himself aloud, not saying in these words, but gee, man, it's like a really high percentage of the projects that we have signaled are projects from BC, and this is the kind of help that we are getting from BC. When the Premier of BC knows that this is something that is very, very, very important to me. I don't have to work so hard on expanding any ports in British Columbia if I'm not going to have anything to export out of them. Now, am I? You might want to consider that. He very subtly played that card yesterday, and I think that Premier Eby heard him, because the words that he was using when he was side by side with the Prime Minister prior to their meeting were different. And there doesn't seem to be, we don't have much news of what the results of that meeting were. Which seems very strange, because every time he meets with Danielle Smith, there was always this big thing after, where they were either talking together or they were each going to the mics themselves, and Danielle Smith, talking about how she feels some hope, and maybe there's going to be a meeting of the minds, and hey, there's a grand park, and we didn't get that. After the Eby Carney meeting, I had a feeling that there might have been a little bit of a dressing down there, potentially. As you mentioned, the other problem that Danielle Smith might be having by playing this is she might be, and making nobody happy, she might be paving the way for the Tory party to grab a better foothold. Peter Guthrie, who was a member of her government and who left, made a statement on May 19th about the UCP separation and the pipeline MOU. Since we have a few minutes, let's show it to you, because we haven't had a chance to feature Mr. Guthrie too much yet. We've talked about him, we mentioned his name a couple of times, but we haven't had a chance to actually hear from him and what he is saying as the leader of the new Tory party here. It's not actually called the new party, the new party, the Tory party.
Hi, MLA Pete Guthrie here. We wrapped up in the legislature this week, and frankly, the final days summed up the concerns around this UCP government: instability, poor planning, and reckless decisions. Albertans watched serious questions emerge around unauthorized disclosure of voter information tied to nearly 3 million people. This wasn't just a technical mistake. Elections Alberta raised concerns. Those warnings were ignored, and the UCP changed the laws anyway. And now the RCMP are involved yet again. Furthermore, the courts pushed the independence petition process back onto government. The ruling highlighted the legal uncertainty created by rushing through legislation. So, the petition was not exactly struck down. It can proceed, but Cabinet now owns the decision. So, let's discuss the political reality inside the UCP. For years, separatist sentiment has existed within parts of the party's activist base and its internal structure. Under Trudeau, those voices grew as frustration with Ottawa rose across Western Canada. When the Liberals were re-elected under Mark Carney, the UCP chose to weaponize that anger politically. And the Premier took to the airwaves, committing Alberta to a referendum, believing separatist sentiment would continue growing. But Albertans began distinguishing between frustration with Ottawa and wanting to leave Canada. And the Forever Canadian campaign confirmed what most Albertans already felt. They want a fair deal, not separation. And as first support for separation softened, the UCP found itself trapped between governing for Alberta and governing for its own political survival. Now we're watching a government deliver one message publicly while saying something very different privately to factions within its movement. Governing this way creates instability, undermining investment, long-term planning, and public trust. We saw that again this week with the pipeline MOU and the Pathways carbon capture proposal. Now, let me be clear. I support pipelines, Alberta's responsible resource sector, and getting our products to market. But this agreement is not the victory the UCP is selling Albertans. No private company will build this pipeline without taxpayer guarantees and protection from runaway costs. Trans Mountain was 600% over budget, and that was on an existing corridor. This proposal will cost tens of billions while Albertans struggle with affordability, housing, rising electricity costs, and declining confidence in government. Meanwhile, Pathways is backing away from the commitments behind this deal. So, the obvious question becomes, who exactly is carrying the financial risk here? Because increasingly, it looks like Alberta taxpayers. In fact, the MOU is listing Alberta's government as the pipeline proponent. So, don't be surprised if the UCP eventually tries to funnel projects like this through the Heritage Fund, leaving taxpayers on the hook. And all of this while government continues fueling instability through threats of separation. The reality is, separation would devastate Alberta economically. Even having a referendum weakens Alberta's negotiating position and drives away investment. Albertans want stability, competence, and leadership focused on affordability and growth, not populist gamesmanship. And that's where the Tory party would take a different approach. First, no blank checks. Alberta taxpayers should not be left carrying unlimited financial risk for projects private industry should finance. Second, separate the pipeline discussion from the Pathways carbon capture proposal. They should be evaluated independently on their own merits. This MOU also commits Alberta to net zero obligations, including electricity grid components. So, considering the major affordability implications of that, Albertans deserve to understand the costs. Third, rebuild trust by working with Indigenous communities, neighboring provinces, and investors, because major projects succeed through cooperation, not confrontation. The Tory party believes Alberta can defend its interests while remaining a strong part of Canada. We need a government that governs with foresight, discipline, and credibility. Thank you for listening.
So there you have that, kits and cubs. Again, not riding very high in the polls. Again, coming back from the feed and being fuzzy. Very weird that this keeps happening. That party is not riding very high in the polls. They're everywhere from a 1% to 6%, depending. But things can shift relatively quickly here. And if there's going to be a civil war within that movement, there might be a lot of conservative-minded Albertans who were giving the UCP their vote because it was pretty much the only game in town. They'll be quite happy to say, you know what, okay, let the UCP and the Alberta Republicans fight it out. We're just going to migrate our vote to the Progressive Tory Party. Anyway, so there's an opportunity for this gentleman here, if he plays his cards right, to start building a stronger base for himself. The thing with Quebec as well, there has been some chatter that the Parti Québécois leader, Paul Plamondon, noticing that his popularity is slipping, might has maybe started floating the idea that there would be no Quebec referendum until Trump might have office. That's interesting because there was a lot of work, a lot of chat about them perhaps working together, or the opportunity for Paul Plamondon to see whatever Canada would be doing to respond to this, and then to create, use that as a they will never understand us. In the Gazette, according to Alison Haynes here, with regard to what's going on in Quebec, the R word has returned with a vengeance, and it's not going away anytime soon. During an in-depth interview with radio host Paul Arcan last week, Parti Québécois leader Paul Plamondon, who has been leading in the polls, reiterated his unwavering commitment to holding a referendum on sovereignty and a first mandate if he wins the October 5th election. Grassroots groups in Alberta secured enough signatures earlier this month to have a question on separating from Canada put on the ballot of a referendum on other matters already scheduled for October 19th. That is actually not a factual statement in that article by the Gazette. So hold on to your hats. October could be a pivotal month for the future of this country, even if a majority of voters in both provinces have repeatedly told pollsters they don't want a referendum, want to remain in Canada, and are strongly attached to the true north strong and free, especially as U.S. President Donald Trump muses about making the U.S. a 51st state. Paradoxical though it is, no one should take anything for granted as separatists in both provinces forge ahead in spite of economic turbulence and geopolitical turmoil. Perhaps this seems like déjà vu to Quebecers who lived through referendums in 1980 and 1995, but there's never been a parallel independence movement campaigning elsewhere in Canada on the same time. By the way, the Quebec general election is scheduled for October 5th. So you can very much see an opportunity in the lead up to this referendum question, especially as we get closer to the 19th and the closing days of the election in Quebec. Monsieur Paul Plamondon referring a lot to what's going on to Alberta and pointing to it and trying to spin it to how it would apply or what it means for Quebec. The extent to which these forces could fuel and reinforce each other is hard to predict, but St. Pierre Plamondon has expressed his support for an Alberta independence referendum, lauded Premier Danielle Smith's quest for more autonomy, and told an audience at the University of Calgary last fall that he hopes to find areas of cooperation. The last two referendums on Quebec sovereignty also didn't take place at a time when foreign entities are eager to exploit Canada's division, be they Russian propaganda mills or MAGA influencers. Already, Canadian researchers have detected an upswing in misinformation and disinformation related to the separatism debate in Alberta. Much of it originated with foreign content farms and is being pushed on social media to undermine Canada's national interests. This isn't the only sign it's not 1995 anymore. Alberta's voter list was compromised by one of the groups backing separation in the province when it was posted to an app and potentially consulted by thousands. Elections Alberta was slow to investigate this major privacy breach, which exposed the personal information of nearly 3 million Albertans. Again, that is factually incorrect statement. Elections Alberta was not slow to investigate. Elections Alberta was legally not permitted to investigate based on changes that Danielle Smith's UCP brought to Bill 54. Two changes in particular. One meaning that the threshold to investigate a crime of the kind had been elevated to make it more difficult for Elections Alberta to open an investigation. In fact, the chief electoral officer went on the record as saying that any of the investigations that they had opened in the previous 5 years would not have been able to be opened under the new law as amended by Danielle Smith. And then the second one was that the investigation had to be completed within 1 year of the commission of the crime, not when it was discovered or reported to the authorities, to which the chief electoral officer said, of all the issues that they had been able to investigate over the last 5 years under the previous rules, none of them would have been able to be completed in order to meet that one. So she created 2 layers of rules that made it such that Elections Alberta would never be able to investigate anything ever again unless it was so brazenly illegal, as was the case with the list leak, that it would give itself a reason to. So it's not that Elections Alberta was slow. Elections Alberta was kneecapped. And again, this major privacy breach, which exposed the personal information of nearly 3 million Albertans, there are grave concerns this could give rise to political intimidation or result in fraud. Not only that, but because it has been confirmed that Alberta voter data was found on the website of a U.S. company linked to the Centurion project. That means that all that data, particularly the identifying voter number that's associated with each person, is now on a U.S. server, which means not only now do we not know if the signatures on the petition were valid, they were short of it, and then they just decided to write the names themselves on it, right? We don't know. We can't even know right now when the vote comes whether or not those votes will be authentic. If that information is on a US server, what prevents anyone from using that voter number to do things? I don't know what can be done, how things can be done, but these are creative people. Elections Alberta is already not allowed to investigate anything for all intents and purposes. How will we be able to, given how the province of Alberta runs its internal democratic exercises, how will we be able to even have confidence, given the fact that the voters list is out and on US servers, along with that voter identifier number? How can we even be sure in the integrity of the vote itself? It's a legitimate question at this point. It's just unfrickin' believable. The level of incompetence, the level of just all around effery that surrounds this whole thing. Man, with investigations by election officials, the province's privacy commissioner, and the RCMP, the integrity of any future referendum is already at stake. In the meantime, the court sided with 2 Indigenous groups that mounted a legal challenge to block a referendum in Alberta on the grounds it would violate their treaty rights. A judge agreed last week that First Nations should have been consulted and overturned the certification of the petition, calling for a separate question on the ballot. Smith announced the government will appeal the ruling, which she called undemocratic, as will the group behind the petition. Back in Quebec, Saint-Pierre Plamondon threw a curveball of his own, saying he thinks the RCMP may be spying on him. He has no proof, but the death this month of René Lévesque-era cabinet minister Claude Morin was a reminder informants have been recruited in the past. The PQ leader said he and his party take no chances forbidding smartphones in crucial strategy sessions or putting them in special cases to prevent electronic surveillance. The comments drew skepticism for some of Saint-Pierre Plamondon's colleagues in the National Assembly. Coalition Avenir Québec Domestic Security Minister Ian Lafrenière, a former cop, expressed doubt, as did pro-independence Québec Solidaire co-spokesperson Rouba Gazal. But CQ Justice Minister Simon Jolin Barrette said he thinks the concerns are legit, so they're pulling a page from Danielle Smith's book, saying things to try to sow mistrust in Canadian institutions. We might be being surveilled. The mention of spying seemed intended to stoke suspicion and portray the Federalist side as underhanded, picking at old wounds. From the sponsorship scandal in which public funds were funneled into promoting national unity in Quebec to recent assertions the Federal Immigration Department was fast-tracking citizenship approvals to boost the number of no voters in 1995, there's plenty of lingering resentment. Then, of course, there's the Clarity Act, which the federal government adopted to set the bar high for a province to secede after Quebec came within a sliver of leaving in 1995. It requires a clear question and a clear majority in favor. Prime Minister Mark Carney recently said the Clarity Act will be applied if Alberta even ever votes to separate, but he dodged the question when asked whether a simple majority would suffice for Quebec to leave. For good measure, Saint-Pierre Plamondon tabled a motion in the National Assembly last week reaffirming a vote of 50% plus one would be enough to separate from Canada. It was adopted unanimously by those MNAs present, since it basically reiterated the thrust of Bill 99 passed in 2000 as an antidote to the Clarity Act. Saint-Pierre Plamondon then urged Alberta to draft its own version of Bill 99. So already there are signs the Quebec and Alberta separatist camps are finding common ground, but Ottawa has been largely MIA in advocating for national unity. Carney's attempt to make overtures to Quebecers in a landmark speech last winter sparked controversy over his rather rosy take on history. Perhaps silence is golden since his approval ratings are soaring in Quebec. In Alberta, Carney is focused on addressing some of the province's economic grievances with plans to build a new pipeline and a fresh deal on carbon pricing. Maybe he's banking on results swaying more minds than rhetoric. But as separatist forces gear up in the oil-rich province, there's a leadership vacuum on the Federalist side, former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney lamented. Someone better step up since it doesn't seem the current Alberta Premier is doing much to counter the independence movement. Smith says she believes in a, quote, sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, whatever that means, but she lowered the bar for collecting signatures to get a separation question on the referendum ballot and is appealing the ruling won by Indigenous groups quashing the petition certification. Smith certainly hasn't seized on opportunities like the misuse of the voter list or the court decision to hit the brakes on a referendum. These actions give credence to fears she's a wolf in sheep's clothing. There are some separatist sympathies within her United Conservative Party. Now one of the main pro-independence groups is urging its followers to buy UCP memberships to pressure Smith to use her powers to put their question on the ballot if the petition process fails. This is a reason why she maybe went early before that could take place. She couldn't be pressured to put their question on it because she did it before the pressure started. At least there's no doubt in Quebec who is leading the yes side and how a referendum would be triggered. To his credit, Saint-Pierre Plamondon has always been transparent and unequivocal about his intent to hold a sovereignty vote should he win the PQ win. To his credit, Saint-Pierre Plamondon has always been transparent and unequivocal about his intent to hold a sovereignty vote should the PQ win, even if being vague would make it easier for him to get elected. A referendum in Quebec is still a big if, as the latest polls show the race tightening between Saint-Pierre Plamondon, Quebec Liberal leader Charles Milliard, and CQ leader Christine Fréchette, who appears to be doing a little bit of work to bring her party back from the brink. Latest polling is showing that if there were an election today, the CQ would pick up 4 seats, which is way more than the 0 that they've been showing for some time. A lot of things can change yet in Quebec. It's not a done deal in Alberta either, but as we hurtle towards October, even those who want no part of a referendum had better get ready to hear the R word like never before. So there you have it, kids and cubs. Lots of things going on here. And yeah, we have a lot of questions that still need to be answered. We have some investigations clearly about that list. If there's any news about those investigations, about that list that come in during the campaign for the referendum, that's going to throw a couple twists and things as well. Lots of opportunities for things to go terribly wrong here. So yeah, um, she, she actually found a way to make this worse and messier. It's mind-boggling. This thing is as clear as mud. She made no one happy. If the vote goes the wrong way, we get to do this all again. Maybe the fact that if they vote yes, they have to go and vote yes again will be a deterrent to people. Maybe some people will just throw their hands up. But she's not going to be premier long. Unless, in the process of trying to remove her, they once again break the law 3 ways from Sunday. And then she decides to act because the attack will be against her. And then she'll be faced with handing everybody else a political issue. Well, gee, you were able to act so fast when the threat was against you, but you didn't act fast at all when the threat was against all Albertans. How interesting. Maybe Albertans should reflect on that. But I would start the clock because I have a feeling that Danielle Smith won't be around long. This separatist group has shown that it is perfectly willing to lie, cheat, and steal, flout the law, and break the law. If they were doing that to get the question on the ballot, they will certainly do it to get her the obstacle out of the way. They believe that she promised them a vote on separation. That's not what they're getting. The reaction from the Davies and Rath and Parkers and Sylvesters of the province are going to be rather colorful. I predict, if they're not out already. If they're not out already, maybe a little surfing on the Twitter will give us a little impression to see if there's any hot take reactions. I'm going to guess that they're not fantastic. From the breakdown, now all our Albertans know what we have already known. You can't trust Danielle Smith. She's a traitor and separatist. This is a press release from the Mikisew Cree First Nation. First Nations won 2 court cases, and we are still not being included, not even an invitation to the table. Today, we saw a sham of a process turn a non-separatist question into a separatist one. The Premier made the decision when she lost in court to First Nations. They won't consult or respect treaty, even when the court tells them. The question announced today is intended to be the beginning of the end of treaty in a manufactured UCP separatist crisis. A year ago, no one was talking about this. Now all Albertans know what we have always known. You can't trust Danielle Smith. She's a traitor and a separatist. She will say it's not a separatist referendum, but we can see with our own 2 eyes that Smith cares more about her own survival than the Canada we know, which is founded on treaty. All of this will cause untold damage to all our relations. We know this because we told her it would, and she wouldn't even dignify us with a response. The Premier talks about hatred and vilification, but she opened up a world of hate on First Nations and continues to do so by attacking independent courts for signing with us, the treaty and the Constitution. Her words are meaningless. The government appears captured by anti-democratic forces. Enough is enough. Chief Billy Joe Tukaro, Mikisew Cree First Nation. Nahedenchi. Danielle Smith's separatist referendum puts us all at risk, but we cannot let our fears and anxieties take hold. We will not stand by and let the extremists who run the Premier also run this province. We're going to stand up and fight for our home, for Alberta, for Canada, and with your help, we will win. Again, Mr. Nenshi is going to have many opportunities to ask Danielle Smith, who is running Alberta. So here we go. I'm just going to show this for you, kits and cubs. We have Mr. Nenshi has a little bit of a video clip here. So let's see what it is that he has to say.
For the first time in history, Alberta's position in Confederation, the fact that we are part of Canada, is at risk. And I know a lot of us are nervous, anxious, scared even. How are we going to let these extremist folks who run the premier and think they run the province take away our country? Canada's not perfect. And we Albertans know better than anybody that we've always had disputes with the federal government of every stripe. We've always argued about different kinds of policy, but we sort those things out. That's what you do in a democracy, and that's what you do in a family. We figured out ways to move forward as Albertans and as Canadians. Today, the Premier has chosen to put the future of our country behind her own political expediency. We know that Canada and Alberta work best together because, friends, now we stand up for Canada. This spring and summer, we're going to be knocking on doors. We're going to be talking to our neighbors. We're going to be mobilizing. We're going to make sure that Danielle Smith and the separatists get the defeat they so richly deserve. The other side is motivated. They're working hard. They have money and influence from other countries. They're working with the Trumpists. But guess what? There's way more of us. And we will come together and we will fight for this country. And we will win. The generations of people on this land have created the greatest country in the history of the world. And I'll be damned if we let Danielle Smith take that away. With your help, we will save Canada. For Alberta, for Canada.
So that's Mr. Nenshi. What he has to say about that as his initial response. See what else do we have here for you? If there's anything out there. There we go. Jeffrey Rath. Alberta Danielle Smith deals a referendum question from the bottom of the deck. To hell with 301,620 Albertans who were promised to vote on their question. Let's have a referendum on having a referendum. Danielle Smith just lost her base and just LLS'd her base. He was so angry. He double tapped the L and missed the O on lost. So the Civil War is coming. The Civil War is coming. Already reported in the New York Times. So according to the breakdown, in the New York Times already, rest in peace investment in Alberta. Court Ellingson, Economic Community Development Research and Strategist, MLA for Calgary Foothills, Alberta Shadow Minister for Finance. The faint cry of democracy dying in Alberta. An audience member disrupted the UCP-led committee proceedings in which the Alberta government approved a separatist referendum to leave Canada. Make no mistake, this is what Danielle Smith in the UCP wants. Prior to the announcement, Christy Clark, if this should succeed, Danielle Smith will go down as probably the worst premier Canada has ever had. If it fails, she'll go down as someone who got lucky and got out of there with their skin intact and certainly still isn't qualified to be the premier of a province. People from the breakdown. If Danielle Smith is responsible for a second Conservative Party self-immolating, she'll be lucky to get a job as a dishwasher. Jen Gerson, I suspect she's on track to blow up her second Alberta Conservative Party. A truly spectacular career if you stop to think about it. Yeah, anyway. There's a lot going on here. But yeah, Danielle Rath. There's a Freudian for you, isn't it? Jeffrey Rath, absolutely livid. Danielle Smith looking like she is losing her base. They're definitely motivated. Don't know if there's a... So yeah, there we go. This is 1 day ago from David Parker, or I'm not sure if this is 1 day ago here. Danielle knows that if there's no referendum, it will be the end of her administration, so there will be a vote. Now, the only question for Albertans is whether or not they wish to remain a tax farm for Ottawa or masters of their own destiny. So yeah. Wow. Like I said, she played all of them for fools. She's playing everyone for fools, really. Not sure at all that she's going to be able to unpretzel herself from this one. But it is going to be sure entertaining to watch her try, while, of course, we all live under an existential threat that she forced us to live under. Yeah, you can say, unless the Prime Minister has some magic sauce under his up his sleeve, I think it's looking like we could say goodbye to that pipeline implementation agreement, because that doesn't look like it's going to be happening anytime soon. If anything, at least there's going to be no movement whatsoever. I don't know how it is that she's going to show up on July 1st with that proposal with the proponent. Who's going to sign up to be a proponent if they don't even know if the pipeline's going to be in Canada by the time it is built and operational? Pierre Poilievre came out today and said that all Conservatives will campaign for Alberta to stay part of Canada. I'll believe that when it lasts. I don't believe him. The man represents a riding in Alberta, Battle River Crowfoot, and it still has had not a word to say about the fact that all the residents in there who are on the electors list have had their data compromised. So, yeah. All right, kids and cubs, as you know, there is also a hockey game going on that I was watching before we started. Was a little behind, but it seemed very exciting when it got started because we had 2 goals in the first minute, one from each Carolina, one from Montreal, and then we had another goal from Montreal within the first 5 minutes, and then a third goal from Montreal somewhere within the first 11 minutes. So as far as I know, where we are in the match, it's 9 minutes left in the first period with Montreal already leading 3-1. Let's hope that the trend is our friend and we have something to celebrate tonight. I guess we could say we could celebrate. We also have to celebrate that Danielle Smith may have just ended her own political career, maybe permanently. That would be a nice thing to celebrate. Unfortunately, she might take a lot of us down with her on the way. Kit Wishful Sun says Queen of Chaos. Kit J. Crick says Danny is playing with fire. Kit Linda, I hope she has good security because she's pissing off some really crazy people. Yeah. Yeah. I see that. Wow. Let's see if there's any other comments from you here, Kits and Cups. Ooh, I see some memberships have been doled out. That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, people, for doing that. Let's see here. Kit Grace here. The nerve going along with the MOU and then pulling a stunt like this, plus the way she spoke about Ottawa when the PM is bending over backwards for her. Uh-huh. Yep. Indeed. Kit J. I suspect the petition contains signers that don't even live in Alberta anymore. That's quite possible. Saucy. Other provinces are getting a bunch of things too. This will likely be a way for them to get more now. Yep. Indeed. Let's see, what else do we have here? Kid J, Danny is another populist cult leader. She isn't a serious leader and generally can't lead a damn thing. Kid Toronto Dan, if Smith and Ford get voted back into power in the next provincial elections, I give up provincially. Do not do that. Don't give up, please, Kid Dan. We need you. You're one of the few people who keeps going despite Kid Saucy reminding us that Danielle Smith was partying with the separatists last week, dancing to anti-communist songs. Yeah, a lot of Nate Pike of the Breakdown was pointing that out, singing Chumbawamba's the Tub Thumper. I get knocked down, but I get up again. And him getting a chuckle at Danielle Smith singing a Marxist tinged song. Oh my God. Kit Tabby G. Wrath is already stomping his feet. He posted that she has lost her base. We just took a look at that. Kit Uncover says, I sent you some responses to Danielle's speech from the separatists. Oh, you did? Okay. Since you did that, let's go take a little look at that. Kit Uncover sent me some stuff. Let's go take a look. There you go. And I see here. Okay. Mikisu, I read. Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation for immediate release, 38 territory. Albertans are now seeing Danielle Smith's government for what it is, undemocratic, authoritarian, and willing to bend to the whims of a loud, angry minority. First Nations have been sounding the alarm bell for months now. Danielle Smith continues to trample on treaty and continues to damage the economy and reputation of the province in order to stay in power. It is time others join us in fighting for our rights, the rule of law, and a functioning democracy. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Let's see here. Corey Hogan, the MP for Calgary Confederation, says the Premier of Alberta intervened to lower the threshold for getting a separatist question on the ballot. She then intervened to eliminate a review requiring the question be constitutional. She intervenes again tonight after yet another court has told the separatists to slow down and follow the law. The Premier can wrap these actions in the words of democracy, but she's willfully ignoring the will of the vast majority of Albertans who want no part of the separatist conversation. The simple reality, a reality that you would not find in her speech, is this. She has pushed along a question because a group has threatened to bring down her and her party if she does not. Her internal political problems have become our national crisis. The Premier asserts her patriotism. I will take her at her word, but I will remind her a patriot puts country ahead of party. A leader steers the agenda rather than having it blindly dictated to them. An Albertan finds ways to do what's right, not justifications for doing what's wrong. This baffling referendum on a referendum question will do nothing to settle anything. It adds another layer of confusion. It will divide, it will distract, it will damage. I hope our government will consider how to step back from this madness before the damage to our province's social fabric and economy is too great. Corey Hogan, MP, Calgary Confederation. So yeah, let's see, what else do we have here? Mitch Sylvester. To become proponents of a binding referendum, the Alberta government is asking you, the citizens of Alberta, for a clear mandate. And he just lists the question there. So it doesn't seem to be too angry on that one. We have Jeffrey Rath's one. So there you go. Yeah. Wow. I am. So yeah, that's what I got here. Thank you, Kit Uncover, for supplying that. Kit Jillian. Well, Danielle Smith is walking a very fine line, and at some point she's going to stray too far from the professed position or the signaled petition. The professed. At some point, she's going to stray too far from the professed position or the signaled position. Indeed, because you can't serve two masters. And right now, she's trying to serve two masters. I think if we allow ourselves to get a little biblical for a moment, I believe, if I am not mistaken, it is Matthew 6:24. Quote, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both, God and money, or in this case, the separatists and the oil barons. Or according to a Dutch proverb, she who serves two masters has to lie to one. So who's she lying to? Separatists or Canadians? Because she's lying to someone. Wow. Yeah. Let's see here. What else do we have? Is there anything else here from the kits? I think that might be the extent here that I have. So there you go, kids and cubs. If there's any more, I will bring it to you on tomorrow's show. But for now, that's the end of this episode of the True North Eager Beaver live watch party on whether or not Canada, Danielle Smith will betray Canada. The answer is yes. But she also appears to have betrayed the separatists. So there you go. Oh, and there was another goal in the first period, somewhere between the sixth, the 11th and 14th minute, with the Montreal Canadiens now leading 4-1 and still on a power play. There. So it's looking like for a good night for the Canadiens right now. All right. Ooh, the chat is fire tonight, says Kit J. Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Thank you so much, Kits and Cubs, for joining me in such great numbers. Especially since I just decided within an hour of the event that I was going to do a live stream, because I was just going to sit down and watch the game quietly. And then I decided, you know what, this is actually a big event in our history. And since I'm here, why not? According to Kit Linda, the Habs are up 4-2 at the end of the second. So it looks like the second was much less exciting than the first. That's okay. That's okay. Kit Jillian asks, does Alberta use paper ballots? Yeah, throughout Canada, we use paper ballots everywhere. We sometimes have tabulators to help, but we use ballots from coast to coast to coast here. Let's see, what else do we have? Just looking here through the chat stuff, that there's more here for us. So yes, we hope that you enjoyed listening to us, because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring. Word of mouth is priceless. Let your peeps and poops know all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. Kids and Cubs, if you would like to support the show, there's a few ways you can do that. One of them is scanning this QR code, which will bring you to our YouTube page, if you're not watching this there already, where you can click on like, share, and subscribe, which helps us very much with the algorithm, particularly with what's been going on over the past month or so. That seems to be resolved. We are back to our sort of normal numbers immediately after the show ends. So I think that whatever issue was happening, there's been enough people complaining about it or drawing attention to it, that it has stopped for now. So that's good. But yes, like, share, subscribe, very, very important. We thank you for all your support that way. And again, if you would like to support us financially, particularly this month, given that the throttling or the strangling that we've been exposed has so far that we know of really sliced down our revenues by 2/3 for this month, based on a normal activity. So if you do have the opportunity to offer us a little extra support this month in a timely manner, we would be very grateful for the support. You can do that by scanning this QR code, which will bring you to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund on our coffee page. And through that, you can offer your favorite beaver a cup of hot chocolate, because you are what you drink. Just saying. And plus, it keeps your favorite beaver nice and moist. So a little add of beaver would be quite appreciated if you enjoy what we do and what we do resonates with you. Now, if you are not able to contribute financially, please do not worry, because the gifts of your attention and participation are the ones that matter the most to us. And we'd like to hear from you at our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly. Give us some guest suggestions for the interview project, if you like. Kids who cook, Kids Who Craft, Kids Who Cultivate, the hashtags on our socials to let us know what you are doing. Of course, send us your good news because doom scrolling can get a little heavy. If you're looking for us at our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, also on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home. We have the Beaver Bites on our Substack. We have our coffee page as well, where you can find us. We have the Damn Fam Instagram run by Kit Uncover and the Damn Fam Discord run by you, members of the Damn Fam. So all these places where you can find us. We are very happy to interact with you wherever you are. We read everything you write, even though we are not able to answer everything. And if you happen to be watching on YouTube, right down below in the comment section, leave us a little something as well. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is where you can also send us a direct bank transfer if you are doing the Buy Canadian thing for your donations. It's a direct bank-to-bank transfer, and we get 100% of your donation. And of course, as you've seen, there was some memberships distributed. We have memberships and stickers and super chat on our YouTube channel. All the ways that you contribute really matter and do make a difference. We thank you for your enthusiastic expressions of encouragement. Because democracy is something that you do, Kits and Cubs, remember that we have our House of Commons petitions, E7340 at the moment, which would ask the Supreme Court to refer the constitutionality of the Alberta's Justice Statutes Amendment Act of 2025 to the Supreme Court and direct the Foreign Influence Transparency Commissioner to immediately investigate the meetings between the Alberta Prosperity Project and the Trump administration, given that we know that given that it seems to appear that there's some collusion in the United States and that the voters' data is on U.S. servers. This might be more important than ever, particularly if we might be losing control of the voting process with that very sensitive information being available. 23,747 people have signed this petition already, and I will include it in the chat here for you, Kits and Cubs, to share. And of course, we have the other one, our commons.ca petition for 7395, which is asking for the House to basically stop funding Stornoway as a private residence for the leader of the opposition. We have that one for you right here as well in the chat. So please do that. Of course, if you're in British Columbia, remember the 30th is your final day if you are registered with the BC Conservative Party to vote in that leadership race. So please get your votes in on time. And remember, there are two big protests going on May 29th in the province of Alberta and May the 30th in the province of Ontario against the two seemingly most corrupt premiers in Canadian history, who happen to be premiering simultaneously. So maybe you want to get out and take care of that a little bit. Let's see. Words of wisdom. Breathe. Don't let this bypass your logic center, your rational center. Breathe, stay calm, make a plan, and steel up your resolve. Because it looks like Danielle Smith may have put something all on our plates that we are going to have to digest, but not like it, and then have to stand up against to make sure that she doesn't get away with this, but also make sure that the Alberta separatists do not manage to wiggle their way into doing more damage than they are already doing. Vigilance at all times. We're really going to need it here, because Danielle Smith has been seeming to indicate that she's open for business, and we all know that the Alberta Separatist faction, given the number of meetings they've had in the United States and they're happily declaring it, we definitely know that they're open for business. So, and again, CSIS, RCMP, where the hell are you, man? Jeez. Oh, my word. So there you go. That's all I got for you, Kits and Cubs. It could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And then at the count of 3, if I may, Kits and Cubs, could I please get you to say a little, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, And 3. Yes, I heard you. I heard you, and you said it so nicely. So I can't deny you. Here's a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you. And I'm going to just disconnect after this so I can get back to the hockey game as fast as possible because I know you would like to as well. All right, kids and cubs, amour et bisous, and see you tomorrow. Bye. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music.